Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Thursday. I have a little bit of an echo going on here, but we're in a hotel room in Toronto, so that's probably why you might think this is the washroom behind us, Lee. But we're, I think we're doing okay with the Wi-Fi at this point, but we're not sure how it is. It's streaming pretty well right now. I have a question here from Susan Hardy. Uh, It's really interesting because I have another one from Catherine, which I'll bring up a little later, roughly on the same subject matter, but it's just a little bit different. He says, Ron, you mentioned that one can train the brain to quiet down, stop the chatter. Just a little comment on that. You can prepare yourself to have that happen, and you can slow the brain down a little bit towards having it more quiet. But something else has to happen before the brain can actually be quiet. And I'll talk about that a little bit. When I think of doing this, I direct my attention to behind myself, especially behind the head and the neck. It has some merit in quietening down my thoughts, but only for a few seconds. And then I think about how I am quieting down. It's like having a comment on the action. Can you speak about how to aid in the process of quietening down the brain and thoughts? Well, I'll start off by talking a tiny bit about a thing called the silent mind, which is often very profoundly talked about in the East. And copied, trying to talk about it in a way as if it's really there. All kinds of things like that happens anyway in people's interaction with each other. But a really silent mind or quiet mind is something that is not common in, let's say, in the personality's engagement with life. It's a dilemma because, as a bracket, spiritual quiet mind, it really means that the emotional, mental thing we call the intellect is actually made unconscious by a higher state in preparation for engaging with a mental state or mind state. I like mind state better because we get the two of them mixed up. Our mental state is often intellectual, which is teeming with emotional dispositional structures or energy related to the personality. This other level has actually a very interesting consequence. It is quietened down by a higher state for the purpose of the higher state talking through it to some degree. And there are many levels of that happening. So we get a little confused, generally speaking, when we start talking about quiet mind or a silent mind, because it's coming right out of the books or the background of the sages in India, the sages in China, wherever it may be. Really, in fact, the linking up with that mind plane has really very little to do with the intellectual plane. An added difficulty is that nobody wants to be without control of their own mind. In our world, personalizations are extremely important, and they are glued to validation, the validation of an individual, the importance of an individual is lit with the activity and the quickness of an emotional mind, whether it be you doing something physical, emotionally, or mentally, or coming up with an idea faster than somebody else. At that other level on a mind plane, it's irrelevant. So this is not our personality orientation in our world. However, our personality will, I'll say it out loud, try to fake it. That's the personality. Whereas the mind plane will use the personality as a baseline for engaging with others around information that may be a cut above what we can allow ourselves to understand. This is, oh my, a lot of people have a lot to say about these particular levels. And really, in the intellectual orientation has a lot of alignment that it uses in terms of belief systems. Higher state engages with something with a level that relates primarily to expression of what is there, as opposed to expression of what needs to be said to align with beliefs. However, it can align with beliefs if the personality isn't capable of letting go of a stream of beliefs, and I mean a stream, an interconnected number of things that make some sense to the personality. I'm sorry, but we're all involved with having one of these personality things. Without it, our version of how to engage with life would seemingly be not able to connect with life. So there are billions of versions of personality, ways of engaging with life, dictates, expressions, camps, how one needs to be, although to be valued by someone else. In that mind plane, that is not considered very valuable unless it is necessary to align with position and place related to an engagement with dialogue or communication through a language of sorts. The language usually is related to belief system. That's a language. So that mind plane uses the personality, and the personality is quiet for its purpose, not quiet for its own purpose necessarily. And inadvertently, there are many ways of having that happen. But preparation for it is fascinating. One of the ways that you can prepare to have that happen is by being aware above your head and behind you. Now, Susan says she's aware behind her head and her neck. That'll have an effect. It will slow you would call it chatter, but the comforting engagement with expression in your brain down a bit. You really have to do this often to have an impact, and it might impact you for a couple of minutes, 2 or 3, maybe 5 minutes sometimes. But when you're dealing with this kind of thing, you're going to have the reflex to bring your expression back because it's comforting to anyone to have that chatter there. It's often being downplayed as well, but it doesn't need to be downplayed. Oh, that brain of mine keeps tickety, tickety, tickety. Then there is a necessity to have that happen to encourage the individual to have a sense of value internally relative to how it has been engaged with from the time of its birth. Any one of us has had this kind of thing. To let that go means quiet. What are you going to do if there's quiet in there? Well, the first thing the personality says, in lieu of something of this nature, oh, a lot, because I'll be really quiet inside. I'll be this. I'll be that. I'll be this. That is the relationship with personality that we all have. I am, they are, she is, he is. That way, because that's their mode of engagement with others and with the world. And it's a method of using that emotional mind in constructive manner, like we've been trained to in school. You learn this, and then you learn that, and then you learn this, and you make sense of both of them, put them together, and then you learn this, and you add this sense making, and it makes some sense here. That's what we do. There's no negation in it. However, when you start talking about spiritual orientation and the silent, that particular kind of mental engagement, going quiet, you need to have a reasonably stable personality that doesn't need consistent help in calming itself or relaxing itself so that that mind can be quiet. And then the emotional mind underneath was still functioning. The intellect is still functioning. It's a product of all of the stuff that's gone on in your life. It doesn't fly away and it's never seen again. That's not real. It's quieter. It's more reflexive. Now it can be really quick, but there's also a mixture of a higher state along with that quickness. Quickness, you see, isn't a proof of something, of a value of an individual. It's an expression of the personality. And it's something that we've been trained about and talked about. Well, if you're quick and you're valuable, then you're better than somebody else. We don't even know if another person around us has thought the same thing, open our mouth, and we just express that same thing out of our mouth. It's already been thought about. The other person said, well, not necessary to express that. We don't know that, and we don't care. What we do care about is you got it out first, therefore somehow you're important. That's that emotional engagement, that personality vitalized structure that's necessary to maintain a sense of worth in an individual until they don't need it quite as much as they need it now. Well, talking about the whole world, aren't we? Yeah, all of us in our way of engaging with the world. But when you talk about this in spiritual terms, many people say, I wish my brain was really quiet, blah, blah, blah. But they don't really. Because if it was, they would think that there was something wrong with them. Nothing. Empty. Zero. No thoughts. Not used to that. But the expression of the individual continues on. And it is engaged in a manner that relates to allowing a flow of a mind plane to enter into that place within you, that personality place within you, that can be linked to that higher state in increments of levels of development. This is very difficult to get across, speaking for myself, mainly because we don't think that way. And we haven't had a lot of experience with these kinds of engagements on the common level. We've had stories about rather few people engaging with this. Lots of stories about a whole bunch of people who say they've done this, but it's not engaging that way. Yet, we couldn't tell one way or the other because the nature of it is that it's not focused on the personality, it's focused on something beyond it, using that personality as a piece of equipment or a tool to engage with life in a manner related to a different state. So, don't be in a big hurry to have this mind quiet. However, if you do a couple of things, number one, something similar to what Susan is doing, it has an effect on her. If you're aware above the head and behind you, you can include the back of the head, anywhere at the neck area and lower, there is an impact on increasing the ability to watch you function. Don't care how you function. We care how we function. We set up images and structures and determine to function that way. And we defend those ways of functioning. Oh, God, grip my teeth until the death almost, but it never reaches that until you are considered by yourself infinitely important and valuable. This is the nature of our world. This other method of gently, respectfully, kindly, with a great deal of attempt to understand and be compassionate or loving, you watch how you function physically, emotionally. This is not about deciding whether you're right or wrong, good or bad in that function. You watch how you function. You watch what your thinking is inside and your expression is outside. You're creating a mode, a space within the personality, because you're focused there, so that you can watch despite how you think that makes you look, that makes you sound, that makes you tend to be in the eyes of others or in the eyes of you. And in doing that, you are creating a space. I won't call it empty, but it's quieter, where you can watch you as you are with no comment. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of willingness, and it takes a lot of patience. But that will cultivate an awareness beyond what the personality can allow you to have, as anybody is at this second. So it can be helpful to anyone. You don't have to spend 24 hours locked into it. You can spend some time. It's like a contemplation meditation without the focus other than allowing yourself to watch. What that does is allows a kind of beginning link with something within you that is willing, kind of a willingness to be honest with yourself without the business of judgment and assessment that we are so aligned with, that makes our personalities valuable in our eyes. And by doing this simple thing, we find it becomes difficult for us to do because we don't like looking at what we're doing. If you've already decided that everything you do is the only way to do it, you won't have an interesting way of doing this. It'll break down. You won't be able to do it because you'll see that there are other ways to do the same thing, just not as important as yours. In fact, that's what the world is filled with. You will begin to understand, well, this is one angle. And then you may see another angle within seconds. And you may see other angles. Or sometimes you may not be able to see any other ways of doing the same thing. Because personality will not let you do that. You've already trained it to see only in certain manners, certain ways. That's not a negative thing. It means you have a very strong system that allows you to be well defended in your way of seeing the world. Because if you didn't have that, it would be very uncomfortable in your world. Not so simple, this business of quietening down the expression of a comforting way of engaging mentally. It's really emotionally, mentally, so that you feel a relative comfort within you. And you have reassurance that you're okay. If you had an impact with a quiet mind or a silent mind for, let's say, a week or two, you might begin to think that there was something wrong with you, that you're not able to think the way you used to be able to. You might be thinking you're becoming less functional. If you considered the possibility that by watching, you were still functional, still able to do things. It'd take you a minute to remember something, but that is that activity of the emotional mind becoming less conscious and more reflexively unconscious. And that would be something similar to a higher state. The personality can copy this kind of way of acting in a nanosecond, but it can't do it forever. It'll copy it when you're thinking you're more spiritual than everybody else. As soon as that happens, you will know, or should be able to tell, that you're not, because that higher state doesn't act like that. Higher state wants to include everybody. Terrible, isn't it? Woo. But wants to be inclusive, regardless of how a person may be. How can this person be helped to eventually get to the stage where they can engage and know for sure, recognize that presence within them, and find the links that will help them to gain access to an understanding that moves them beyond only the understanding that is constructed by the personalities. Wish and hope to be elevated, to be valued by all those with the same idea, one could say, or any other idea. It doesn't work like that. Most people, in their evaluation of others, are engaging with evaluation of themselves. If they are vulnerable within, they will think another person is not as good as they are, or shouldn't be. Or if they're jealous about it, they'll try to put the other person into a situation where they are vulnerable so they can prove that they're more superior than they are. It's not a negative thing. It's just the self-protection of a kind of loving that they have for themselves in relationship to how they need to be okay within them. It's a movement. They're within a movement towards learning more. And they're following the rules and regulations of our plane. So there's no negation in it. But sometimes ruthless, sometimes unimaginably sad. However, that sadness is not valuable either. So we go slow into this process of higher state growing. And this is, I'll just check. I know I've talked about two things here, but I just want to make sure I didn't put something else down. The one other thing I did put down, I'm not sure that there is a different kinds of chatter that goes on. Primarily the chatter that goes on in our heads is related to kind of self-direction, is self-comforting. I may have talked about that. Or a place within that you can go up to a line where you can want to change within yourself, slowly. But after that line, you can feel the intensity building. It's often being said that by many people, by the way, that you reach a certain point and then intensity gets so strong, and it's the intensity, it's called sometimes of the self, of the soul. It's also the intensity of the personality. This is as far as I can go this second. This second. 2 seconds later, all changes. 1 second later, could all change. Could get more defensive, could get more open. These little shifts in all of us have a purpose. I often think they have a purpose of helping us to understand ourselves. It's really hard for us to say, whoa, I think I'm a little bit nervous here. I don't think I want to grow any farther than this week. But saying that would be an admittance to the personality that it's okay if it feels nervous, and it can allow itself maybe a little bit later, as soon as it gets comfortable in that nervous area, that it can go farther, it can move forward. We come up with all kinds of things to underline this nervousness, reasons why it occurs, all the rest of it. But there is a discomfort in growing sometimes. And there is a wonderful comfort in growing sometimes. We experience many of these things. And our physical system, our emotional system, and our mental aspects, and all of their defensive repertoire wants to maintain a real engagement with controlling a whole mechanism that we call personality until it can start to let go of it. Do I have to do that? Do I have to say that? No, I don't. I don't know. Yeah, but they're never going to know. They're not going to see this, blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah, they will. That higher mind, when it comes in, has a tendency to settle in a way that doesn't elevate the personality that much. As a matter of fact, it helps the personality to see through that elevation a bit. Helps it in a way that is characteristic of a higher state. It's a weird way to say it. Where there is an occurrence, an increase in perception in the personality, and an increase in reaction by the defenses. So if you have an increase in reaction that you've noticed over the last 3 or 4 years or months or weeks or days, go right to it right away, best you can, and ask for help for it. Think of that higher state. I don't care what your belief is. You want to use the words of your belief? Use those words. If you don't have a belief that is really focused on that, think of the highest possible engagement with infinity that your mind can allow you to have. And consider it possible, perhaps, to engage with something in between you and it, and recognize that you don't know what you're doing. So you need some help with it. and go for that link. Like, reach out for that link. Bring it in best you can. And you'll find something weird happening. The emotional structure will soften a bit. Even if it's only for 10 seconds, it's softened. And if it's softened, do it again. Do it again. I always advocate using the light map. It's an energy orientation. Ask for transmutation and healing for all of your being, but in a gentle, balanced, and appropriate a manner as possible. Let it go then. You're not looking at everything to beat yourself up. Let it go and keep watching. Notice any slight change. And when you notice that change, it'll be slight. But when you notice it, more energy will go to it. You're increasing that flow. Use that flow in a respectful, kind, gentle, balanced manner as possible. There is the other option. Use it aggressively. And it will happen. It'll come in more aggressively. To me, that's not an option. It's not a help. It is an option, but it's not a help. And I mean no disrespect with that, because in our world, our engagement is to intensify. We're trained that way when we want something. We want to express something. When we're looking for more reassurance, we don't even know we're doing that. It doesn't matter that we don't know, we do it anyway. And we think that that should work. It usually pushes people away. It doesn't work very well. The quietening down of that takes a long time. So there's a link up that goes on. Ultimately, Buddha say a few things about this. We don't very much in the Christian world say very much about this. But our physical intensity, our emotional intensity, and our mental intensity, kind of the link up that we call mental often, where we're constructing things in our mind and thinking and wondering and looking for solutions. All of these three levels, even though they're not separate, are talked about like they're separate. So when you think about these things, they're always in the personality. They're fused with links at a level that fundamentally relates to a versioning of how we think we need to be. It's tricky. Personality is very tricky. And it's not worth devaluing that. It is worth recognizing it and being okay with it. It can give you a couple of real laughs if you happen to be in a laughing mood that day. When you see yourself doing something and you say, what am I doing that for? Doesn't make any sense. Well, it makes sense to the constructed personality that you have. So you can watch that and laugh about it and not necessarily align with it. It helps in relationship to being honest with yourself. It's not a comfortable situation. Susan, I wish you well with that process of being attentive above your head and behind you. And also creating that space within you where you can watch. No beating up. Gentling down. When you feel that, excitement coming on, ease it off just a little bit and smile and say, my goodness, wow, that's amazing. Do we all do that? Answer is yes, but don't tell anybody else. Here's another question. It's uh, very similar to Susan's question. This is from Catherine in Vancouver. I run a quick question, meditation question. When I'm meditating lately, I can clearly experience that my body is in meditation. With a sense of stillness, emptiness, loss of proprioception, and physical boundaries. That can happen, by the way, when you're walking around, not only when you're in meditation. Eventually, still have control over your body, but you're more engaged with something else. I also notice that my brain is often simultaneously talking to itself, telling stories, and not the least bit still. This seems a strange dichotomy. Does the brain need to chatter away in order to keep busy, or should I try to intervene and onboard it somehow to align with the experience of my body? You're not going to be able to do that very well because unless you attempt to use it with your personality will. Your personality will also be in alignment with your emotional disposition. What's happening there is the emotion inside, mental, intellectual engagement, is protecting you against not becoming outside yourself. Or too quiet yet. Our dilemma with this stuff, and we have to watch this one, is in our personality orientation, that is a valued way to meditate. Meditation is like that. You don't notice your body at all sometimes. You can be in your mind, or you can be asleep, and you really don't notice your body then. And when you are in your mind, just look for the depth of your mind. You'll see it spatially, because if you talk like that to your personality, it will give you a rendering of what that might mean. And just stay. And if you're really, there's a whole lot of chatter and stories, just say, get out of here. I'm meditating right now. Quiet down. I'm meditating right now. I'm not interested in your stories. Try that and see if that will be helpful. What you'll notice in that is you'll have to be really, really soft. And when you're attending, say, if you're not from the highest and best, get out of here. I'm busy. Come back later after I've meditated. But if you're not from the highest and best, you don't need to be here at all. I'm not interested. If you are meditating and you do something like that, something else may occur that may be helpful. It may make you nervous. But if it does happen, first thing you do is you talk to yourself and say, easy, 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 Catherine, easy, easy. I'm just trying to be calm here. Just easy, easy, because you're talking to the emotion that's linked with the body, that's linked with the mind. Try that for a while and see how that works. And Continue on if you're having the body quieting down. It's a good sign. It's great. Many folks have that body quietening down, and you don't even notice, you can't feel it, there's nothing around. But they don't realize that it's only their physical body that's quieting down. Doesn't matter. Just remember, keep the meditation going. Stay with it. Engage with it. When the mind is moving, say, no, I'm not interested right now. It may switch to pictures. It may switch to any kind of deception. It may switch to dealing with pressures that you may have in your life. It may give you advice. No, I'm not interested. I'm meditating right now. It's going to be very difficult to do that because some of that will align with how you think rationally. Get it to get out. Just say, no, I'm not interested right now. I'm meditating. That will give you a relationship beyond the personality, because the personality is interested. Natural. Why wouldn't it be? So I would suggest do the best you can with that one and let me know how that works. I wish you well with that. I wish you both well. And I think at this particular stage, what we'll do is we'll start to meditate. It's a little bit early. It's almost, I think it's about between 1:45 and 10:02. So we'll meditate and for roughly about an hour. And I wish you well in your meditations. Good night, everybody.
अष्टतरेऽत्र विनाश कल्पितमोसनं हिमजले स्नानं च निद्रावरम् नानारत्नविभूषितं मृगवदा मोदाङ्कितं चन्दनम् जाति चम्पकबिल्वपत्ररचितं पुष्पं च धूपं तथा दीपं देवदयानिधे पशुपते कल्पितं गृह्यताम् सौवर्णेन भरतखण्डरचिते पात्रे घृतं पायसम् भक्ष्यं पञ्चविधं पयोदधियुतं ब्रह्माफलं पानकम् शाकानां युतं खण्डोज्ज्वलम् ताम्बूलं मनसा मया विरचितं भक्त्या प्रभो स्वीकुरु छत्रं चामरयोर्युगं व्यजनिकं चादर्शकं निर्मलम् वीणाभैरिमृदङ्गकोहलकला गीतं च नृत्यं तथा साष्टाङ्गं प्रणतिः स्तुतिर्बहुविधा एतत् समस्तं मया सङ्कल्पेन समर्पितं तव विभो पूजां ग्रहाण प्रभो आत्मा त्वं गिरिजामते सहचरा प्राणाः शरीरं प्रभम् पूजा ते विषयोपभोगरचना निद्रा समाधिस्थितिः सञ्चारः पदयोः प्रदक्षिणविधिः स्तोत्राणि सर्वा गिरो यत्तत् कर्म करोमि तत् अखिलम् शम्भो तवाराधनम् करचेन कृतं वा कायजं कर्मजं वा श्रवणनयनजं वा मानसं वा पराधम् विहितमविहितं वा सर्वमेतच्छमस्व जय जय करुणाब्धे श्री महादेव शम्भो ब्रह्ममुरारिसुरार्चितलिङ्गं निर्मलभासितशोभितलिङ्गम् जन्मजदुःखविनाशकलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् देवमुनि प्रवरार्चितलिङ्गम् कामदहन करुणाकरलिङ्गम् रावणदर्पविनाशनलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् सर्वसुगन्धिसुलेपितलिङ्गम् बुद्धिविवर्धनकारणलिङ्गम् सिद्धसुरासुरवन्दितलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् कनकमहामणिभूषितलिङ्गम् फणिपतिवेष्टितशोभितलिङ्गम् दक्षसुयज्ञविनाशकलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् कुङ्कुमचन्दनलेपितलिङ्गम् पङ्कजहारसुशोभितलिङ्गम् सञ्चितपापविनाशकलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् देवगणार्चितसेवितलिङ्गम् भावैर्भक्तिभिरेव च लिङ्गम् दिनकरकोटिप्रभाकरलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् अष्टदलापरिवेष्टितलिङ्गम् सर्वसमाद्भवकारणलिङ्गम् अष्टदरिद्रविनाशकलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् सुरगुरुसुरवरपूजितलिङ्गम् सुरवनपुष्पसदार्चितलिङ्गम् परमपदं परमात्मकलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपम् नित्योऽहं शुद्धोऽहं बुद्धोऽहं मुक्तोऽहं नित्योऽहं शुद्धोऽहं बुद्धोऽहं मुक्तोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपम् नित्योऽहं शुद्धोऽहं बुद्धोऽहं मुक्तोऽहं नित्योऽहं शुद्धोऽहं बुद्धोऽहं मुक्तोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपम् चिदोऽहं चिदोऽहं सच्चिदानन्दम् चिदोऽहं चिदोऽहं सच्चिदानन्दम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपम् नित्योऽहं शुद्धोऽहं बुद्धोऽहं मुक्तोऽहं नित्योऽहं शुद्धोऽहं बुद्धोऽहं मुक्तोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवस्वरूपम् शिवस्वरूपम् Shiva Tato na mata na bandhur na tata na putro na putri na mrityu na bharta na jaya na vidya na pratirmamaiva Gatisthvam, Gatisthvam, Tvameka Bhavani. Gatisthvam, Gatisthvam, Tvameka Bhavani. Bhavabdhavapari Mahadukhaviru Prapat Prakami Pralovi Pramadda Kusamsare Pasha Prapatta Sada Gatisthvam, Gatisthvam, Tvameka Bhavani. Gatisthvam, Gatisthvam, Tvameka Bhavani. न जानामि दानं न च ध्यानयोगम् न जानामि तन्त्रं न च स्तोत्रमन्त्रम् न जानामि पूजां न च न्यासयोगम् Gatisthvam, Gatisthvam, Tvameka Bhavani. Gatisthvam, Gatisthvam, Tvameka Bhavani. न जानामि मुक्तिं लयं वा कदाचित् न जानामि भक्तिं व्रतं वापि मातः गतेस्त्वं गतेस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि गतेस्त्वं गतेस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि कुकर्मी कुसङ्गी कुबुद्धि कुदास कुलाचारहीन कदाचारलीन कुदृष्टि कुवाक्य प्रबन्ध सदाहम् गतेस्त्वं गतेस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि गतेस्त्वं गतेस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि प्रजेशं रमेशं महेशं सुरेशं दिनेशं निशीथेश्वरं वा कदाचित् न जानामि चान्यत् सदाहं शरण्ये गतेस्त्वं गतेस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि गतेस्त्वं गतेस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि विवादे विषादे प्रमादे प्रवासे जले चानले पर्वते शत्रुमध्ये अरण्ये शरण्ये सदा मां प्रपाहि गतेस्त्वं गतेस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि गतेस्त्वं गतेस्त्वं त्वमेका अनाथो दरिद्रो जरारोगयुक्तो महाचीर्दीन सदा जाड्यवक्त्र विपत्तो प्रविष्ट प्रणष्ट सदा गतेस्त्वं गतेस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि गतेस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवामि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवामि
And now we'll just begin to do the balancing and grounding. And please take care of yourself. Thank you for the questions. And if you would like, we would really appreciate more questions. We have a seminar coming up and also some more Thursdays. Thanks, everybody. Good night.